How much water is in the Great Lakes? A lot. So I have a whole bunch of statistics on how much water is in here, and I can't remember any of them. A lot of people try to talk about how much water in terms of elephants or feet over the entire Great Lakes. Let me answer it this way. When we look at all the water, all the fresh unfrozen surface water on Earth, most of it is stored in lakes, okay? So not the water that's in the ground and not the water that's frozen, but just like unfrozen fresh surface water, most of that is in lakes. There are like 100 million lakes on Earth. 10 of those lakes hold 80% of all of that water, okay? That's a big deal. The Great Lakes hold about 20% of the water. So there's a lot of calculations you could do in terms of like trillions of gallons and things like that, but I think the most important thing is to say that the Great Lakes hold about 20% of all the Earth's fresh unfrozen surface water. About 20% is in Lake Baikal, about 20% is in the African lakes, and then the rest is divided up among just a few other lakes, or at least the rest of the 80%. So it's a lot of water. What is the Great Lakes Compact? The Great Lakes Compact is an agreement. There's sort of several iterations of it, but in general, I would argue there's sort of two parts to the Great Lakes Compact. One pertains just to the 8 states in the United States that surround the Great Lakes, and it basically says you can't divert water outside of the Great Lakes Basin. There is a broader version of the compact that includes Canadian provinces that kind of says, hey, before you divert water outside of the Great Lakes or share it with the rest of your country, we should talk. So the compact is essentially an agreement that says you can't divert water outside of the Great Lakes Basin. What is so special about the Great Lakes? This is a great question. The Great Lakes are so unique. First of all, the Great Lakes are by far the largest system of lakes on Earth, right? So Lake Baikal is the largest lake by volume on Earth, but it's a lake in isolation. The Great Lakes are a system of unique interconnected lakes that cover this major climate territory. What I mean by here is Lake Superior is the first of the lakes in terms of drainage. It's cold, there's a lot of ice and a very low population. It's deep. Then you go through Lake Michigan and Lake Huron. There are major cities on those lakes. Then you go down into Lake Erie. Lake Erie is very, very shallow. Only 30 meters deep relative to a lot of these other big lakes. Part of one of the consequences of that, it's susceptible to pollution. So we go from one of the most deep and beautiful and pristine lakes on Earth, Lake Superior, to one of the largest, most polluted lakes, particularly with the western part of it, on Lake Erie. Now, another thing that makes them unique is that they are vital to the economy of North America. This is an often cited quote, but some people have done calculations that show that if the Great Lakes were a country, it would have the 3rd highest economy in the world. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the Great Lakes are a hub to shipping, to the automobile industry, to a lot of the manufacturing and commercial activities between the United States and Canada. So that makes them unique. The fact that the Great Lakes are divided by these 2 countries, I think makes them in many ways unique. It makes it hard for us in some ways to understand the lakes because we have to combine these data sets. I also want to mention that the Great Lakes are home to a lot of other nations, sovereign nations, indigenous peoples. So it's actually like a multinational resource. And that's unique as well.